This is the Share a Voice podcast, presented by Look Left Marketing. In each episode, we talk to the smartest B2B leaders to tackle the most pressing marketing challenges. Here's your host, Look Left Senior Vice President, Jennifer Tanner.
Today, I'm joined by Mike Yaffe, multi-time CMO with 20 plus years of experience in cybersecurity marketing. I think it's safe to say that if you've been in cybersecurity marketing for any amount of time, particularly in the Boston area, you probably know Mike and how knowledgeable he is. So we're really happy to have him join us today. Welcome, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay, recently you and I were talking about a real problem that is seen often in B2B tech companies, and that's the relationship between marketing and sales. The two are inexplicably linked, but collaboration is not always easy. So let's talk about it. Tell me what the typical relationship looks like between marketing and sales.
Look, I have been in numerous fights and we've had conversations about marketing opportunity attribution, and this sales rep didn't do their job, and this marketing campaign was terrible. And by the way, a lot of the marketing campaigns are terrible. So let's put that out there. But it's interesting because I think it is very confrontational. I'd say more often than not, adversarial. The people aren't working together. There's very defensive. And I've been very fortunate in my career that I've worked with a couple of great CROs, really. Brendan Evers, Steve Pace, a couple to name a few. And these guys, we work really well together. And I think the interesting thing about it is we hold each other accountable and we get along really well. So it's important to acknowledge that things don't go perfectly. You screw up. Trust me, I screw up 5 times before lunch, right? I do, as anybody who knows me, and you would probably attest to that as well. But really, you have to be accountable and you have to hold each other accountable without being defensive, right? Not everything's going to work. The sales rep might not follow up in an appropriate manner. So you have to be collaborative and work together on an end-to-end process. That's really important.
Yeah. Do you think there are any misconceptions that either team might have about the other that could cause problems?
Yeah, the marketing guys will sit around and say, not mine, but marketing people will sit around and say, oh, the sales guys are just waiting around and closing deals. They're not doing anything. It's all layups and bluebirds and stuff like that. And then the sales guys think the marketing people are all about swag stores and collecting names at RSA and don't really care about driving revenue, which in some cases, both people are right, but in some cases, both are wrong as well.
Do you think there are any more tangible pain points worth talking about?
If you come in and check your ego at the door, which doesn't always happen and isn't always that, but it's not just the goals, but it's the reporting metrics. I will tell you that the first thing you probably need to do is sit down and explain to sales or marketing. They need to have this conversation. What are the numbers that we're both going to agree to? What is marketing going to deliver in terms of actual sourced revenue? And what's the process by which you get there? How much is sales going to do? How much is channel going to do? There's 3 legs of the stool. Marketing is going to drive revenue and through programs, campaigns, nurturing, website, SEO. You have channel working with either kind of channel initiated or channel pass through. And then the sales team's going to be accountable for driving any revenue themselves. And then you have to have a report. You have to have, I'm old, so I get to use this reference, but Johnny Dangerously, right? You get to use one report only. And that is your single source of truth for sales or marketing. But look, and I made these mistakes. First board meetings or first executive meetings, I go in with a report, then the sales guy goes in with a different report. And then you have a third report that says this, and nobody agrees on what the hell's going on. You agree on the data and the process and what you're each accountable for. And you have to agree on what we're going to do. Marketing's accountable for 10 ops, 12 ops, 150 ops. I don't care. And X amount of deals and X amount of revenues. And this is how we're going to get there. And then you sit down and you measure against that and you don't deviate. The worst thing that you can have happen is one of those 2 parties going off and start running reports on the side. You have this continuum, you have this funnel, then you have somebody saying, I know, but now I want to look at it like this. You can't do that. You have to have consistency of the metrics. That's probably one of the most important things. And by the way, if you want marketing to drive 8% or 80%. I don't care in the model, right? People get wrapped around the axle around credit. It doesn't matter. In this process, in this way, marketing should drive 50. Marketing should drive 5. I don't care. But you have to agree to it and stick to it.
Reporting triggers another question about technology. How has technology changed maybe how marketing and sales interface? There's so many options out there right now for reporting and tracking, CRMs, things like that. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there are great pieces of technology using things like Marketo or HubSpot, a marketing automation tool can give you great information. Things like intent data providers. We've used Mombora in the past. You get a lot of information sometimes, and it's the same problem in marketing. You get a lot of information. It's information overload. How do you get to the things that are going to help you make effective decisions with that information? You get all this intent data poured into hundreds of contacts in Salesforce. Show me the 3 that are really in market. Sometimes that's hard to get to. There's cool techs like AI that can do the prospecting now, where I get an email and it's like, oh, you went to school here and did this, and you must be a Celtics fan and you do this. Wish I am a Celtics fan. That's neither here nor there. But it's like they went through my LinkedIn profile, read my high school yearbook, and a whole bunch of other things. So prospecting, you can do that and makes it easier. And we've dug in there and done some AI things. I still think what you need to do as part of this process is do things and do things well. And the tendency is to continually to say yes about a lot of things. And I think, look, it's marketing's responsibility to say, because sales sometimes they ask for a lot, and they should ask for a lot. I do think marketing is a service arm to sales. Like, it's our job to provide them the support they need to close the deals, which is one of the hardest things to do out there. But it's challenging because it's a zero-sum game, right? If marketing can handle 10 priorities, you just can't do 20, right? It doesn't work like that. Look, I can do this and I can put this on the list of 10, but we have to take something off. How should we collaboratively and collectively look at the list to make things better? And just look, circling back to technology, it's like security, right? I want one of these, and oh, there's mobile device management, and oh, I want to do these things and do. Next thing you know, you have this collection of tools. They're not integrated. You're not really doing anything. You don't have a cohesive strategy. Can it make things easier? Tech, yes. Has it in some ways? Yes. But it has to be like anything else. You have to have a strategy and a thoughtful approach, and you have to get value out of the tools you're bringing in.
Absolutely. You mentioned like marketing maybe being able to do 10 things and needing to prioritize, but 20 things really need to be done. I think that's particularly a problem in smaller marketing teams. I know you've been at a variety of organizations. Are there specific challenges to startups versus larger organizations that people should be aware of?
Yeah. The problem with startups is lack of focus, right? It's a constant fire, and you're trying to build. Look, I will tell you, if you're at a startup and you're doing this, and you want to assume most people know this, but the goal of that is to build a scalable, repeatable model that you don't need to scale. Every time we have to increase revenue, you can't hire a marketing person. You're not going to get, oh, the budget, we have a 30% higher target, I'm going to get 30% more in marketing. It doesn't work that way. You have to find ways to get more efficient and effective. You're always putting out fires. There's a million things to do in startups, but it's the lack of focus that kills you. And it's hard to say no to deals. Look, I've been there. I've been at startups where one of the ones early in my career, we literally did not get paid until the check from the customer came in and was cashed and put in the bank. And it was not a particularly fun 6 months. For real, right? But you need to understand that you have to figure out what the common use cases are, right? You have to build a website that people want to go to. You can't continually be like, oh, there's something new, and then now we're about this, or now we're about that. You have to have courage of your convictions and your strategy, right? When there's competitors out there, you can't, oh, the competitor said this, we now have to say it 20% better and different. Like, no, you don't. You don't always. I also think you have to track and measure. People are generally just throwing money at a problem without really tracking and measuring at this, because they either don't have the competency, the capability, or they haven't done it in the past. And then I will say that at bigger companies, let's say you have 3 to 7 person marketing team, and then you get into that 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. The problem there is nobody in marketing actually goes to the events and really manages the customers. I'd say one of the great things about, and when I say customers, sorry, prospects, my guys, particularly this guy where I work with, Peter, he's amazing. So we would do BDRs report to him. He runs all demand. So we get leads in at noon. They go to the BDR at 12:30. They get trained at 1. They're calling by 2, by 4 o'clock. And this has happened multiple times. He knows if somehow we got a bad lead list, which miraculously happened more often than not, or something, right? So it's a tight flow. And he also had a great relationship with sales. At these larger companies, marketing's over here, sales is over here, and you're not really listening to each other, I find, and it becomes more academic, the approach. Oh, we're going to do this big event. It was so successful. We got so many eyeballs on it. We wrote all this great content and posted it. I don't know who read it. I don't know if you had any conversions off it. I feel as you grow it, at some point you lose the cohesiveness that makes marketing the go-to-market team and not sales and marketing.
Yeah. What are some signs that people should look for that might indicate there's a lack of collaboration or a problem in the relationship?
Talking smack about the other one is probably a good one. Trying to disprove, be defensive. I'd say the one thing I take a lot of pride in is if you talk to folks on my team, I think they would say, we're trying to drive revenue. What do? We're trying to drive revenue, and everything can be measured. Lack of alignment of goals. I would confidently say that the salespeople that we've worked with in the past feel like they got what we were trying to do. If we had an appointment setting lead or some lead and I didn't do my job, you'll get followed up with from marketing. When you have a program, not all the programs are going to work. I tell people this all the time. Half the stuff we do, the new stuff, more than half probably won't work. But if you're not failing in marketing, you're not pushing the boundaries and looking for the edges of where you could potentially be successful and find a new customer base or find a niche of where you can bring in some successful prospects, then salespeople just saying, the sales guys that I've worked with, and they're just fabulous and saying, we got outsold here. We got beat. This was a winnable deal and we didn't do what we should have done. Thanks for being honest. We're all trying to push in the same direction. Let's keep moving forward.
What are some good first steps that maybe a new marketing leader or someone new to their role can take to start building that solid relationship with the sales team?
Yeah, good question. It's funny. I'm helping with some companies now. So I literally had this conversation with somebody yesterday. This is not a setup. First of all, ask them what they want. Marketing still is a service arm, and your job is to help a little bit, put a tent around the circus sometimes, right? You shouldn't be throwing 50 events at a sales team. You should be throwing 4 and saying you can pick 2, right? But realistically, from a process standpoint, it's here's what I think I can commit to you in terms of driving revenue. Here's how I think I can support your team in terms of qualified opportunities. And based on the run rate and the way the business is handled, I can get you and your guys 40 opportunities, 50 opportunities. And this is my commitment to you and to the business. Your commitment is everything's in Salesforce. Your commitment is we're going to move these through the stages at the appropriate time and place, because I want to see if, look, at the front end, if we can't get enough pipeline, that's marketing's fault. If your things are dying at stage 300, 400 during proof of value time, then maybe there's a product fault, or maybe we're just doing a crap job on proof of concepts. But I think it's setting the stage for accountability, first of all. And look, sales guys want to sell. They're coin operated. How are you going to help them get to that goal? Okay. And don't sign up for something you can't do, but also be open to things that you might have gotten it wrong, or you might need to pivot. You might need to adjust, and that's okay too. But the first thing is that these guys have a number, right? And I think they feel that marketing people just don't live in that world. With lack of accountability and all the risk is on the sales team. Sales team don't hit their number, they get blown out. Marketing does. It's easy to blame a sales guy. And I think you need to get in the boat with them together if you really want this to work.
It sounds like communication is really key too, especially having a feedback loop between marketing and sales. Do you have any suggestions for how people can foster that?
We would sit down every other week with myself, my 3 top guys, the CRO, his 2 top guys, and we would come with all the marketing numbers. And we say, look, We've identified a problem. Here's the solution. And here's what we're going to do to compensate and controls. It was funny. Last year, we got off to an awful start pipeline wise. Awful. Like we were way behind. We had to go to the board and be like, we're way behind in pipeline. Brendan and I are on the same page, right? CRO. We both agree. This is what we've done. Here's what marketing's doing to make it better. Here's what sales is making to do better. And we're in this together, right? And then we go off and do our best to try to fix it. I think when you try to get cute, people feel like you're hiding something, which is exactly what you're trying to do. Now, also, you don't want to lean into the punch entirely, right? If you don't have to, but don't be cute. Be transparent. Just be like, look, we're not good enough here. We got to get better. Okay. And here's what we're doing to get better. I think with the board, with the executive team, with your sales counterparts, that goes a long way.
It sounds like being transparent, authentic, checking your ego at the door. Those are all really important to having solid communication and collaboration. Or any real world examples or stories that people might find interesting?
I think you have to, where we've had some success is sitting down, and I spend a lot of time in the field and I get to know the sales guys, get to know the customers. And I think if you actually take time and involve the sales team in the process, it doesn't become marketing's plan. It's our plan. And I do say sometimes you have to give the sales team what they need, not what they want all the times. And I've seen this at other companies, but people are like, oh, I want to do this event. I want to go to, because it doesn't matter to them. It's not their money. You're like, your territory has been allocated $20,000. So you can pick two. Oh, then I want this and this. It's a very different conversation to help them understand. The other thing too, and we've had this conversation with reps. I say this all the time. I'm like, look, we're going to go to this event or these series of events in your territory. And we're going to evaluate your ability to be successful by, do we generate pipeline? But more importantly, do we generate revenue? And if we generate revenue, we will spend more money and more time finding these. If we do 2, 3, or 4 of these and there's no positive outcome, we can't continue to do that, right? We can't continue to support go to market in this way. Maybe it's the territory, maybe it's it doesn't matter. I don't care what the answer is, but that's not a good use of money. We have to find another way to pivot and think about our resources. I do love, like I said, working in private equity, but there aren't a lot of times where like, oh, you have so much extra budget to spend. It generally runs a little tight there. We have to be sure we're getting the most out of what we have available.
Where have you seen the most success as of late in bringing in the right leads for the sales team?
Look, focusing on the website and SEO, be where the buyers are. I think that's super important. And I also, look, I went to RSA when it was in San Jose. I'm, that much gray hair, right? And for those of you that don't know, it was actually in San Jose and it used to be a crypto show. If you say you're not going to go to RSA, do you know what drives me crazy about marketers? Oh, we have to be there. We'll be missed. That you are not going to be missed if you're not at RSA or if you're not at Black Hat. And I'm not picking on them. I think those shows have value. I do, if leveraged in the right context. Let's not kid ourselves. I've never had anybody go, oh, I couldn't possibly do business with you because you don't have an overpriced booth at one of these conferences. We've been able to grow while doing those shows very well and grow while not doing those shows. So I would challenge any predispositions like that.
So back to relationships between marketing and sales teams, what is one action that marketing leaders could take today to make improvements or address issues they're currently having?
First of all, be open and transparent. We've said this, but it's go in and own something if it doesn't work. What are our mutual goals? What do you need from me to help support you? And sometimes that's going to be sales enablement and training and doing these things. And then you identify the scope of what you want. And then you're like, look, we can do this and this, and we can do this, or we can do this, right? How do you spin all the plates effectively and over communicate that stuff with the sales leader and the sales teams, right? Sit down and tell them what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and then be accountable. Like, look, it sucked, but I had to get up at a kickoff like 3 or 4 years ago and be like, we're at 73% of our revenue goal. marketing. That kind of sucked. They really did. I don't want to get up there and do that, but I was honest about it. I was transparent. It wasn't like we were ineffectual, but we didn't get to our numbers. So I think there has to be some level of accountability there. Agree on the goals, agree on the format, and continually update because it's so funny. You always get calls for jobs and stuff like that. And people are like, we need somebody who's really strong with numbers. How have you used numbers before? I'm like, oh my God, kidding? I still think there's got to be a massive gap for people who love telling the story. And I get that you need a great story and a great narrative to be successful. But if you can't measure the effectiveness of what you're putting into market, you're going to be short-lived. I'll tell you the other thing too, is people are always asking marketing people, they're like, oh, what's your superpower? Or where do you gravitate? Look, you have to be really good with demand and you have to have a strong relationship with sales. You have to work in product marketing and you have to understand competitive. And that's actually, and not some ivory tower stuff. You actually understand how the sales guys are going to implement what you do. And then what's the brand? What's the corporate message? I think the brand is important, but if you have a good message, a good story, a good product marketing, good competitive analysis, you understand your key differentiators and then how you're going to go about putting those into the market in demand shape, I think you're going to be successful. But look, if you can't manage or find people to help you manage those things, we'll get timed out of a job.
This has been really interesting. Thank you so much for your time today and sharing your insight.
Anytime. Thanks. Look forward to it.
This has been the Share a Voice podcast, presented by Look Left Marketing. Subscribe today at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more B2B marketing insight, visit us at lookleftmarketing.com.